All right, thank you so much. Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure, it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you to this space hosted by Creditinfo to launch the Fraud and Identity Solution product. Now, I'm sure that we can agree that one of the key elements in a thriving financial ecosystem is trust. Trust that the people who are applying for loans are exactly who they say they are. Trust that financial institutions, such as some of the ones that you work with and lead, can serve the public confidently and securely. And that's what we're here to talk about this evening. Shared reflection about how we can strengthen the financial ecosystem here in Uganda. Collaboratively, no less, because it is a collaborative effort. It is my great, great pleasure to introduce a couple of speakers who will come in just a little bit later. But first, let me also just say I'd like us to take advantage of just being in this space where we brought together a really great gathering of different players in tech, in regulatory, in financial institutions themselves, banks. There's a really intentional group of people here. So I hope that you'll speak to the people next to you, the people across the room, have some conversations. It would be amazing if by the time we left this room, there were some new partnerships, there were some new collaborations, perhaps even a renewed sense of trust in the systems that support our financial sector. Now, as we get into our program, I'd like us to continue to humor me throughout the evening. I'd appreciate that. I'd like to find out here in the room, how many of us work in the banking sector? The banking sector? Okay. And how many of us work in specifically microfinance or any other type of lending institution? Any takers? Okay, there we go, I see you. And then technology, fintech? Okay. All right, regulatory or policy. Oh, okay. Okay, regulatory and policy is more like this. Okay, all right, we see you. This is such, I myself, as a person who doesn't work in finance, I have to say I'm very reassured being in this room. This must be the most well-vetted, thoroughly vetted space to be in this evening. So thank you for making that type of space for us. We're excited to have you. So join me in welcoming our first speaker, a gentleman who is instrumental in shaping the work of Creditinfo here in Uganda. Put your hands together and welcome the Country Managing Director, Mr. Mwanje.
Our guest of honor, the Executive Director, Banking Supervision, Bank of Uganda, Mr. David Kalyango, represented by the Director, Non-Bank Financial Institutions, Mr. Mackay, our members of the board for Creditinfo Uganda, present, our group CEO, Mr. Satrajit Saha, CEOs and executive directors of our partner banks and financial institutions present, leaders from fintechs, telcos, and other regulatory bodies, our esteemed colleagues, partners, and friends, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. I set the protocol on which we stand tonight. I want to say good evening and a warm welcome to all of you. As introduced, my name is Mwanje Charles Mack. I'm the Managing Director for Creditinfo Uganda. And it is a privilege for me, as part of Creditinfo to host you today at the launch of our new solution, the Fraud and ID solution. This event marks a defining moment in our journey to strengthen trust, resilience, and innovation within the country, and making sure that we have a strong financial ecosystem in Uganda. Creditinfo Uganda has a proud history of transformation and innovation, and this is, said in the many things that we've done previously, but from where we started and began our journey as CompuScan many years back, we introduced the first credit referencing bureau in the country, and later through this journey, we've seen quite a number of transformations, becoming part of the Experian group along the way, which is a global leader in data analytics and decisioning. And then before that, and then transitioning into Creditinfo group, which today operates across in more than 40 countries worldwide. So each stage of this journey has brought new value to Uganda's financial sector. In 2016, as CompuScan, we pioneered the first credit reference bureau score in Uganda, and I'm happy to see the CEO of Finca in the room because they were our first partners in taking on value-added services and looking at credit scoring in the country. So then, from then, we developed a number of solutions, and we have introduced more value-added services that our partners, lenders that are using in managing their risks, but also enabling smarter decisions and ensuring that we have greater financial inclusion. Today, we launch the Fraud and ID solution, and this is built on a legacy of the many solutions that we've had in other markets, and brings together cutting-edge innovations to address one of the most pressing challenges of our time, and that's fraud. I know I was chatting with some of you earlier, and what I noted is that many of us Ugandans actually have been victims of fraud, including myself. So this comes in timely. So in Uganda's fast-growing digital economy, businesses need tools that protect them from fraud without making life harder for their customers. Our platform that we're launching today helps institutions cut down on fraud, make it easier for people to open accounts, and also promote financial inclusion, while ensuring that they still meet the strict anti-money laundering rules required in Uganda. So this launch is not just about technology, it's about collaboration, like we've heard from the MC, and it's about banks, fintechs, regulators, and technology companies coming together to share intelligence, align best practices, and build unified defense systems against fraud. It is also about leveraging data to empower decision-making and supporting the growth agenda of the Uganda financial sector in 2026 and beyond. So as I set the scene, I just want to say that we have quite rich discussions happening this evening. We will hear from, of course, our CEO giving us the global perspective, Group CEO giving us the global perspective, and specifically looking at advancing Creditinfo strategy for trusted financial ecosystems. We'll also have a bit of a deep dive into the solution that we are launching tonight. And one of our product experts will also come in and take us through the fraud and ID solution. So you'll be able to see it actually how it works. And we hope that by the time you leave this place, you'll be telling everyone about this innovation. We've also arranged a keynote address from our chief guest. And he'll be sharing a little bit more on building confidence in Uganda's financial system from the regulator's perspective. And then we'll crown it up with a panel discussion, this featuring very distinguished leaders from the banking sector, from the fintechs, and the regulators. And they will be exploring collaboration or collaborative intelligence and digital innovation in fraud prevention. Before I conclude my opening remarks, I wanted to share something with you all, and something that I promised my son that I'll share when I get an opportunity. And I remember it was on the 30th of January. We started talking about this event and putting it together. We were on a conference call with John and others. You get to know John, one of our executives from the group. And we were talking through the solution and what we have to do this evening. My son, Ethan, is 15 years. And he listened to the conversation somehow. And at the end of it, the call, he told me something that I promised I would share today. He asked me, but how are you going to fight fraudsters? They are so sophisticated these days. So I took him through the process that we'll be talking about later today, but from my own perspective, telling him about how we want to make it very difficult for those fraudsters to be able to even get into the financial system. And also make it simpler for genuine customers to be able to, able to transact easily and open up or get onboarded into the financial system. But at the same time, help the institutions that we're working with to confidently engage with their customers. And I thought that, answered something, and he was not convinced, but he said to me that, I thought that's not what you do. I thought you do something else. And I said, yes, we do. We've been collecting credit information, ensuring that we build profiles for consumers to be able to, get onboarded into the financial system. However, we do much more than that, and that helps with credit risk management. And I told him that specifically this solution, all banks are in the business of risk management, and we provide solutions that make it simpler for banks to manage their risks. And this is one of those solutions that we provide using the information that we have, plus any other information that is available. And he said he would one day want to see how it works out. So I promised him that when we launch, I'll share the story, and I'm feeling happy that I have shared. So he'll be able to see it. So as I conclude, I want to say that as we embark on this important day, let us remember that fraud prevention is not just a technical challenge. It's a collective responsibility for all of us. So together, through collaborative intelligence, digital innovation, we can build financial ecosystems that are safer, more inclusive, and more resilient. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Creditinfo Uganda, I thank you all for joining us and invite you to engage in today's program as we shape the future of fraud prevention in Uganda. Thank you very much.
You're free to go. Thank you so much, Mr. Mwanje. Let's give him another hand clap. Now, there's something that Mr. Mwanje shared. I remember even when we first met and we were talking about this event, one word that came up over and over is the word trust. Trust, trust, trust. And even from my untrained eye, I can see that fraud is not what it used to be. It's more sophisticated. And so the systems have to adapt. There has to be collaboration. There's a unique need for data, maybe even more so than ever. And intelligent systems that can distinguish between bad actors and genuine customers. And so it is an exciting time to be alive, I think, and I hope you'll agree, to be launching this particular product in this particular ecosystem where it is very much needed. And on that note, I'd like to welcome our next speaker, a gentleman who, before actually I introduce him, perhaps let me say this for some of us who may not know in the room that while Creditinfo operates here in Uganda, it is a global network that is creating systems across markets, right? And our next speaker brings that global perspective with over 25 years of experience in the global market, Europe, Asia, Africa. Welcome with me, the Group CEO, Mr. Saha.
Thank you, Kemi. And thank you, Mark, for getting us started. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I just love coming here in Kampala. It's so green and warm. But more importantly, I love coming here because every time I come here, I learn something new. And I just love the frugal innovation over here, how innovatively you go about doing things. How many of you have seen this? Who would like a fraud alert margarita and a safe ID mojito? For me, this kind of shows how innovative and creative folks are here in this market. And not only us who are creative in this room, the fraudsters are as well, right? And that's why I think today's conversation is very, very topical. Now, I'll have my good friend, Professor Robert Meakin, come and talk about the solution that we're going to launch later today. But what I thought I'll do is maybe spend some time and give you a bit of an update in terms of our global presence, our global network, as Kemi mentioned, but also some of the new and exciting things that we are working on that we want to bring to the Ugandan market. We are a global information solutions provider that is focused firmly on financial inclusion. And that's the cornerstone of our strategy. Everything that we do is kind of measured with that lens on how do we promote financial inclusion. And if you'll see on this map, although we are headquartered out of the UK, if you look at our footprint, we have networks across Europe and in over 50 markets across the world, but 20 of those markets are actually here in Africa. And even in Europe, we were amongst the first credit reference bureaus in the markets that we operate in and continue to remain, out of the 50 markets that we operate in over 30 of them, we are the main providers of credit information services. And across our network, we support over 1 billion consumers. And just in terms of the bank loans, we process over 1 million loans every single day. If I were to add in the digital loans, that number is many times over that. And I'm really proud to say that over the last 12 months, we have been continuing on this journey of supporting financial inclusion across the globe. So earlier this year, in January, we are going live with the first credit bureau in Cameroon. That's going to be the first credit reference bureau that is being set up in that country. And this is something that we are really proud of. This was done in partnership with World Bank and IFC and BIAC, the local regulator there. We're going to use it as a hub to service 6 countries in and around Cameroon. And in 2025, we were also granted license to set up the first private credit bureau in Bangladesh. I know there are a couple of large Bangladeshi microfinances even here in Uganda. So we are looking forward to setting up our bureau there later on this year and supporting that market. And at the end of last year, we acquired 4 bureaus in the Caribbean region. So that's our first foray in that market. And again, markets where there is a need to support financial inclusion. So I'm really proud of the work that we do across the globe and the impact that has had on lives of millions of people and SMEs across the globe. And here in Uganda, Mark spoke about our heritage. Right? We were amongst the first CRBs to set up operations here in this country. And we are known for our credit reports and scores. That's what all of you are familiar with, you use and you understand. And we also provide decisioning solution that can host scorecards, run scorecards for you, and help you connect to different data sources. Right? But if you think about financial inclusion, the journey for financial inclusion really starts when you open an account. When you open a bank account, when you open a mobile wallet, when you set up, these days, even a SIM card in your name, that's when really the journey towards financial inclusion really starts. And for me, identity and fraud are actually 2 sides of the same coin. If you can resolve identity confidently, you can minimize fraud. It doesn't matter if the channel of acquisition of the consumer is in a branch, in a physical world, or it's in a digital world, right? As more and more of the transactions that we see happen digitally, it's really important for us to have tools that can help you combat digital fraud. And we have seen, the proliferation of digital fraud across the board, not just here in Uganda, but in pretty much all of the markets that we operate in. And therefore, it was really important for us and mission critical for us that as we support financial inclusion in the markets that we operate in, we are able to support our consumers, our clients, the banks, the telcos in the market with helping resolve identity, both in a physical sense, but also digital identity. And I'm not going to steal Rob's thunder as he's going to share details about the solution, but I'm hoping with the solution that we are going to introduce to the Ugandan market today, we'll be able to help you the menace of digital fraud that you see so widely spread across the market. And I also think that for us to have a stable lending ecosystem and a sustainable lending ecosystem, it's really important to educate consumers to use credit wisely. And I've seen this in my own personal experience. I'm from India. When I started working in the first bureau in India about 16 years ago, the consumer loans were being done at a rate of roughly around 48%, when the central bank rate, the annual rate, the central bank annual rate was about 9-10%, right? The reason for such a high rate was because the loss rates in the market were extremely high. But with the advent of bureau and with education of consumers, once consumers understand there is a consequence for defaulting on loans, once they know how to manage their finances better, we have seen market after market after market, their behavior, their performance actually improves. And when credit quality and credit performance improves, it allows the financial services institutions to lower the rates at which they lend money, which in turn is better for the consumers. It brings more consumers into the field of formal lending, right? And for me, that's really, really powerful that we go on this journey of educating consumers. And therefore, on screen, you see a block there called Consumer Solutions. That's going to be the next launch that we're doing in the Ugandan market very shortly. And we are already talking to quite a few of the folks here in this room, including some of our telecom partners, to bring this consumer education proposition to the Ugandan market. And finally, I believe that for growth of any emerging economy, it's really important that we support the bedrock of that economy. And in most cases, it's really the SME sector. And for consumers, if you think about consumers, we have the Bureau report, and now with the introduction of our fraud and our identity proposition, that's going to increase the amount of information available on consumers. We want to do the same for SMEs. And that's going to be, a product that we'll soon bring to the Ugandan market over the coming months. So for me, there's a whole lot of exciting new things that we know has worked in other markets, that we have seen in other markets, including here in Africa, and that we are going to soon bring from our global portfolio to the Ugandan market. But outside of the new products and solutions, there's another thing that's happening in our world today. That's this AI revolution. And at Creditinfo as well, we are heavily invested in terms of using AI, not just to build our scores, make them more effective, build them quicker, build them cheaper, but even in our solutions. So whether it is the consumer education proposition or the fraud solution that Rob's going to talk to you about, we are using components of AI to really support the processing of large amounts of data and being able to provide you with decisions instantly. And even internally, we are using AI to improve our processes, especially when it comes to engineering and also analytics. And then when I think about our Ugandan market here, and Mark spoke about the volumes that we do on loans, and you can just see on the chart over here, right, with the advent of digital loans and mobile lending, how that number has exploded over the last 12 months, right? And this is not the only thing that has exploded, right? When we looked at all of the data that we hold in terms of the performance of loans, including the digital loans, one of the measures that we look at internally to identify whether a prospective loan, can be a fraud or not, we look at a measure called the first payment default, which essentially means you've taken a loan this month and your first payment is coming up in the next month and you miss it. If I were to look at the presence of first payment default across Uganda, the number is very, very high, 23%, right? And that kind of represents to me the challenge that we are facing in this market. And even in terms of real money, if you look at reports from on financial crime from Ugandan police, you can see in 2024 we lost over $270 million US dollars in terms of reported fraud. And if we were to include fraud that goes unreported, that number will be many times over this. So you can see it's a significant dent to the economy that productive money is actually lost to fraudsters. And I'm hoping with the solution that we are launching today and working in partnership with all of you, we are able to combat that fraud. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. And I hope the solution that we are launching today really helps the market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sati. As a small business owner myself, I'm always interested, to understand more. And so when we talk about educating consumers, my ears perk up. When we talk about inclusion, I'm like, okay, inclusion, me, what does that mean? So, I'm looking forward. I may not be, a traditional member of this finance space, but we are essentially the people, the businesses that are looking for financing and so on. So it's interesting to know what that could look like and what it could mean even for people like me to really learn about these processes. And even understanding just this has actually done a lot for my mind and how I view things like financing. And to us, loans always seem like a very bad thing. You know, we don't always realize that there are risks even on the other side, and what that can mean even for me as an honest person that actually wants to, you know, access financing. Now, I'd like to move us into the next part of our program this evening, which is a very important part. And as we get into it, building still off of this conversation around trust, you know, this keeps coming up, trust, and the collaboration that is needed to take us there, I can't help but think about what it means for, again, the honest consumer, right? Because when we talk about strengthening fraud prevention, sometimes it sounds scary on the other end. Does it mean that I'll have a harder time getting a loan? Or, you know, we are protecting the systems. What does that mean, you know, for the enable part? What does it mean for enabling financing? So I'm excited, and I hope you are as well, to understand how this tool works. How does it make it harder for the fraudsters, but still protect the person who is an honest person desiring to access financing. So welcome with me to actually take us through this fraud and identity solution, this trust engine. That's what came to me. I told Mr. Mwanje when he told me about it, it sounded to me like a trust engine of some kind. So to take us through this trust engine, understand a little bit about how it works, welcome with me Director, Fraud and Identity, Mr. Robert Meakin.
So thanks for joining us this evening. You're most welcome. I hope what I have to say is of interest to you and stimulate some additional thinking following some of the conversations that I know that you've been having with some of my colleagues over the past few days. So today we're launching a number of solutions. There we go. So today we're launching a number of solutions for Uganda, and that forms part of our global fraud and identity program. You know, the aims of that program are to contribute to improving financial stability, address deficiencies in AML provisions, support the development of digital economies, and finally combat the exponential rise in fraud. And those four principles have been kind of the guiding principles in terms of the solutions that we're developing within this program and that we're launching today in the Ugandan market. So we're actually launching 3 solutions, and I'll talk through some of the details in a moment, but just give you a quick overview of what those 3 solutions are as for context. So these solutions combat financial crime throughout the customer journey, from onboarding, and Sati touched on that, through account management, and even into transacting. Like I say, I'll share some more detailed view on each of those solutions shortly, but you know, the first solution is focused on helping organizations assess and mitigate risk when starting a relationship with a new customer or extending new lending to an existing customer. You know, the solution brings together a wide range of services in a single platform to deliver this risk assessment, serving both fraud and anti-money laundering use cases. And we heard the term trust engine a minute ago, and I think that's probably a good thing to call this. It's a mechanism for establishing trust in a consumer so that you can interact with them in a confident way, or identifying risk so that you're not exposed to financial crime, be it fraud or be it money laundering. So the second solution focuses on account protection, and it uses device profiling, primarily helping to prevent prevent account takeover during the login process, either to internet-based accounts or to app-based accounts. But it can also contribute to the risk assessment across the customer journey. The solution can uniquely identify the device used to access the account and link it to an individual. And then the third solution helps organizations combat account abuse. The solution can detect patterns in transactions that are indicative of both fraud and money laundering activity. And again, this all can happen through one unified transaction monitoring platform. So that was the overview of the three solutions that we're bringing to the market. If I take a slightly deeper dive into each of those three solutions now. So the first of those solutions that I'll talk about is the transaction monitoring capability, and this is focused on combating account abuse. And in very simple terms, I mean, the fraud practitioners in the room will tell me that I'm simplifying this, but by way of example, criminals use normal-looking accounts to hide and move illegal money. So, for example, here, taking a large deposit, breaking it down into smaller sums, and then transitioning through a network of accounts, ultimately out of the bank. And that clearly is a challenge for any economy where that's happening. And then the fraud use case is where criminals are creating and manipulating and taking control of accounts to steal money. Defenders in this space face three real challenges. The volume of transactions that you need to analyze, the pace with which you need to make a decision. You know, in a transactional space, you've only got a few hundred milliseconds to make a decision. And also the diversity of patterns and complexity of patterns that we see associated with fraud. Those were very simple examples that I put on the other sheet, but there's a whole range of different patterns that you need to look for. And it's really difficult to spot the signal in the noise of that complexity and the volume and make decisions really very quickly. So this is a very brief overview of the solution that we're launching. No, it's not. No, it is. So, you know, this solution we're launching can take in high volumes of transactional data through a really flexible API. So whichever channel, whether it's wallets, whether it's payments, whether it's bank transfers, this solution can ingest that data. And then the rules that can be executed then can identify those patterns that are related to fraud or anti-money or money laundering. And those rules can be managed through a no-code interface that your financial crime teams can manage themselves. So no need for change requests. You know, you've got the tool in your hand there. You can modify and change those rules as required. And the key thing here is the technology that we're using for this can return those accept decisions within 200 milliseconds. And where the decision is to refer that because of a higher level of risk, then there's a case management component within that solution to enable your investigation teams to look at the detail of those transactions and either submit suspicious transaction reports or stop fraudulent transactions in their track. So moving on to the second of the solutions that I touched on at the beginning. So this is a solution based around device intelligence to protect accounts. You know, digital ecosystems present an attractive attack surface, and not only for domestic criminals. You know, financial crime is a global business. This picture is a fraud compound in Southeast Asia somewhere. You know, they organize themselves as well as any of the businesses in this room. They have their finance teams, they have their operations teams, they have their IT teams, they have their call centers. You know, they're organizing themselves as a really, you know, as well as we do. And we're launching a solution that kind of can combat some of that account takeover risk by using a device intelligence solution. So these are the kinds of, and again, I'll be simplifying it for the fraud practitioners in the room, so my apologies, I don't want to insult your intelligence, but just by way of illustration, you know, account takeover can happen where fraudsters get a hold of data from data breaches or use social engineering to get data from their victims or using phishing attacks, and then take over the account, empty the account into accounts that they've got control of. And then there's onboarding fraud, where fraudsters are using stolen identities and synthetic identities to set up accounts, use those accounts then to take out lending, and exit that account out of the bank, so they're stealing the money. So there's two kind of use cases that this can be applied to. So the solution uses this device profiling component, and organizations add that component into their website or into their mobile app. That component then collects a whole range of attributes from the account, from the device. And it can use that data to almost create a fingerprint and an identity for that device. So when that consumer then uses the device to try and log on to their account, it can recognize whether it's the same device that has been used previously. And if it's not, then stop that transaction, and that's the way it protects from account takeover. It can also spot anomalous or risky attributes that sit on that device. So, is it trying to mask its IP address? Is it in a different time zone? Is the screen resolution odd? So maybe 200 different attributes are scraped by that collector, and then that is cross-referenced against a global network of device data points, over 2 billion data points in that network, and it cross-references and identifies known fraudulent devices within that network and can flag that back to organizations that have deployed the solution. So now moving on to the third of the solutions that we're launching today, onboarding protection. So this is where consumers are opening up new accounts or new lending facilities. And our focus is here to provide organizations with a solution that can balance risk controls for fraud and anti-money laundering with the need to provide that streamlined experience for customers. We want to ensure that organizations are attractive providers for customers, but not attractive for criminals. So the solution enables organizations to implement a combination of controls within a single risk assessment, automating the decision-making and optimizing operational processes through automation and predictive analytics. And policy is also controlled at a system level, so it's applied consistently across multiple channels. And if you change your policy, actually you don't then need to go and retrain all of your staff because those policies are implemented at a system level. So at its core, this trust engine, we'll call it, addresses three simple questions. Am I dealing with a genuine identity or a synthetic identity? Am I interacting with the owner of that identity? And are there any risk factors that I need to take into account when I'm making a decision to open an account or a lending facility for that consumer? Again, coming back to the theme of wanting to make it difficult for bad actors, but easy for genuine customers, and more importantly for the people in this room, also making it easy for defenders. So we've implemented three core components in the solution in the red boxes here. So identity proofing looks at validating the presented identity, the identity that you're given when somebody's opening an account, proving that is genuine, validating that that's a genuine identity and not a synthetic identity. Digital risk analyzes the customer's digital footprint based on their email and mobile address, and watch list screening checks for a match against any sanctions lists or politically exposed people lists, and that can run in parallel. So, proving an identity is genuine alongside screening against international and domestic watch lists, that serves this anti-money laundering customer due diligence compliance use case. And then a combination of identity proofing and digital risk helps establish trust in an identity, but at the same time exposes synthetic and stolen identities because of the data that it gathers and processes. So just to try and bring that to life a little bit, a couple of examples. So this is Susan. Now, Susan's planning some home improvements, She needs some additional credit facility. She's looking to open a new account. And she's been chatting to some of her friends about a new credit provider that's just come to the market. And they've got some really attractive offers because they want to grow their business quickly. They're called Sunrise Finance. Apparently, they've got a really quick and easy sign-up process. So she's downloaded their app and completed her information. So basic information about her identity, her name, date of birth, national ID number, ID card number, phone number, email address, and tax number. So it's a simple set of data to collect. So no challenges around high friction here. These are numbers and identity attributes that she's easily got access to. So Sunrise Finance have connected to our solution in the background. And when Susan clicks the apply button, the app transmits that data to Creditinfo. And within a couple of seconds, the platform calls multiple data sources, generates trust and risk signals, calculates the score, and generates a comprehensive report that summarizes all of the information and all of the signals that it's gathered. And this report, I'll touch on just some of the details in that in a second, but this is generated for every query that's submitted to the solution. So even queries that come in through an API get stored away in case, for audit purposes, and additionally to allow investigators and the investigations team to review the information that came back. So that's stored away. Sorry, just give me a sec. Oops. Right, so taking a quicker look and a deeper look at what each of these components do. So the first set of data that we look at is the credit bureau, and this contributes into the identity proofing component that we had on the other slide. So we look at the depth of the credit footprint, so how many accounts does the consumer have, how many unique lenders. You know, the more accounts, the more unique lenders, the more credible that looks as a genuine identity. We also look at activity over time. You know, is this a long-standing footprint? Did we see this individual 10 years ago on the bureau? And we look at that activity during those 10 years. You know, if they're interacting with financial institutions and with the credit bureau in a normal way, that's great. It's building into that being a genuine identity. And the third component looks at how many applications we've seen. So lots of applications against a specific identity in a short pace of time is a really high-risk indicator. So we look at that and make a decision on, you know, lots of applications, bad, no applications, probably bad, a few applications over the past 12 months, you know, that looks normal. So we also cross-check the PII data with what the data that we've got on the bureau. So, you know, do we have the same email address? Do we have the same phone number? You know, does the date of birth match? You know, these are things that fraudsters might not have, and it represents an additional correlation of the information that we've been provided in that application. And Susan's obviously got quite a nice credit score, credit bureau footprint. You know, all of the data that she put into the app all matches. You know, that's building now quite a strong score. So the next kind of contribution into that identity proofing component is around validating some of those identity details against national data sets. So we validate the national identity number against the NARA service, the tax number against the tax authority, and we also check to see if the name associated with that phone number in an industry database matches the name that we were provided with. And all of that data for Susan all stacked up into a really strong profile. So that's the second contribution into the identity proving component. The third one to talk about here is the watch list check. This does robust checks against sanctions PEPs lists that we source internationally and domestically. It can also check for adverse media. And it's one of the challenges, and some people in the room might be aware of this, that in that watch list screening capability, quite often you see a very high false positive rate. Most customers that come to you to open an account are not terrorists, are not drug dealers. So you get a high false positive rate. Now, what we've got here within this solution is a highly configurable decision and matching process, so that you can tailor that matching process and the lists that you want to look at to your specific risk policy. So you can reduce the level of false positives by being tighter, but within your risk-based policy. Susan doesn't match any watch lists, so that came back as positive. It also can execute monitoring at account level, and we can wash your existing customer base through a portfolio wash. Okay, the last contribution into this risk assessment we're calling digital risk, and effectively that takes the name, the email address that was provided, and the phone number, and then looks out across a whole range of open source intelligence services to gather information about that email and that mobile number and cross-check that against the name that was presented. So we can, for instance, identify whether a phone number is linked to a WhatsApp account. We can check to see if an email is linked to a LinkedIn account. We can check how long the email has existed for. A long-standing email is a good thing because it shows that that identity has existed over time. One that was created last week is probably more of a risk. So the data we receive from those services is controlled by the end user privacy settings. So we won't be able to pull down data that the user hasn't permissioned for within their privacy settings. If they've locked it down and made their profile on WhatsApp private, then we're not going to be able to see any of the profile pictures. But we would still be able to see that a WhatsApp account existed for that phone number. The other thing that we look at, and data breaches in the fraud space sometimes would be considered a bad thing, but they're a rich source of data from an identity proofing perspective. A fraudster who creates an email address last week will find it impossible to inject that email address into a data breach that happened 5 years ago. So if you can see the email address that the customer gave you in a data breach 5 years ago, that shows that that email has existed over time and it's interacting with the world because someone's stolen the data and it's been breached. So that's a really positive thing. And, we've seen with Susan that she's got some of those as well, so that's building up her score. We also look at the identity graph, so the little green picture there. So we can see from previous inquiries, what names that email address is related to, what phone numbers is it related to. And, Susan's identity graph here looks normal like any of our identity graphs would look. It's just linked to one phone number, we're linked to one email, and we've not seen multiple presentations of that data. So again, this score's then combined with the identity proofing score, and then that provides that overall risk assessment for Susan. So she's obviously got no idea that all happened in the last 2 seconds, and it probably felt a bit longer for you as well. But 2 seconds later, up pops the application approved screen for Susan, and she feels quite pleased now that she's got that account. She can start exploring the products and services that Sunrise Finance offer. The second example then, Rufus, a very different story here. So he's also heard that Sunrise Finance has a really easy onboarding process, and he thinks, well, that's going to be a great target for me if we can apply in a very easy way. That's going to be great for me. Now, he's managed to get hold of some of Susan's data. So he found her name email address, and national ID number in a data breach. So he bought a data breach off the dark web, and he's got her national ID number, the name, and her email address. Now, he can't use her email address because that would send, when he submitted the application, that would send emails to Susan, alert her to the challenge. Maybe Sunrise Finance might send a confirmation email for entering a one-time passcode. So he can't use Susan's email address. So he has to create a new email address. He needs the phone number in case the Sunrise Finance send him an OTP via text message. So he has to use a phone number that he's got in control of. And then the rest of the data, he's got to guess. He doesn't know a tax number. He doesn't know her ID card number. So he's had to guess what that information looks like. So again, now he clicks the apply button, and over the next couple of seconds, our solution gathers all of that information across those different sources. And it looks a bit different now. So it's, the bureau footprint is Susan's bureau footprint. So yeah, it looks the same. It's got accounts, it's interacted over time, it's got multiple financial institutions on that credit file. So that looks normal. But what we're starting to see is some challenges around velocity, because this isn't the first time Rufus has used Susan's identity to apply for account. And we've seen those applications come into our credit bureau, and when we do this check, we check how many we've seen, and this is starting then to flag a bit of an alert. Not loads, 2 or 3 this week, but still a bit of a challenge. The thing that's really starting to depress the score, though, is the email and phone don't match what we hold of any of the phone numbers or email addresses on the bureau. So that's really now starting to bring down her score. And then we look at the national ID, tax, and phone checks. Now, the national ID record comes back as partially valid. He had her national ID number, he had her date of birth, and he had her name. And that is enough to get a partial signal back to say, yeah, that looks okay. Those 3 pieces of data match. But the thing that didn't match, and again, that's starting to impact the score, is the card ID number, which he had to guess. So the score's starting to evolve into something that looks a little bit more risky here. Watch list, no real difference there. There's no match to a watch list because he's using Susan's name. And then we come to digital risk. And when we look at this digital footprint, this is really the final piece of the puzzle. There's no linked messaging service or social accounts linked to the phone number or email address, apart from the Google account that he created when he created the email address. There's no historical evidence of that email address existing. There's no profile pictures. There's no records in historical data breaches. And if you look at the identity graph, what you're seeing there is, well, you've got a phone number linked to multiple email addresses, because he's reused that phone number in multiple applications with different email addresses. And we also start to see that that phone number is also showing up as linked to multiple names. That's a real risk indicator in terms of what that graph looks like. So he comes out with 136, and when he pushes the apply button, effectively he gets a rejection, or please phone us, and we can discuss your options. And of course he doesn't phone. He just moves on to the next organisation and has another go with the details that he's stolen for Susan. So this is the Trust Engine product then. There's 4 components. It is modular, so organisations can implement any mix of these modules, but I think it becomes much more effective, and the scoring much more predictive if you're looking at across multiple data sources, because that really makes life difficult for the fraudster. To synthesize a genuine-looking set of data across multiple data sources is a real challenge for a frauder, and hard work. If they liked hard work, they'd probably get a job like we do. So the more of these modules that are implemented, the more predictive the solution gets. So ID proofing and AML controls, fraud risk assessments and decision strategies, all available within a single platform, one API integration, and they generate highly predictive risk assessments in seconds. So, in a nutshell, the solution balances customer experience with risk controls. It helps organizations grow because it makes that joining process much more straightforward. It reduces fraud losses because it identifies the fraud through predictive analytics, and also reduces waste in operations in terms of automation. And it also mitigates the risk of fines in relation to compliance with anti-money laundering regulations. So, please reach out to us over the course of the rest of the evening as you have a drink. And of course, we'd love to meet you over the coming days and months to kind of talk about your organization's specific challenges in these areas and how we might be able to leverage some of these solutions and help you solve some of your challenges. And that's me. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Mr. Meakin. I'm going to ask you to clap again. And here's why. About a month ago, I had the pleasure of moderating a conversation a financial institution was hosting, and it was about loans. And I remember one of the panelists said, you know what, this KYC thing, he said, I don't think my bank knows me. And I said, okay, why do you say your bank doesn't know you? And he said, I had X million on my account, and then I withdrew all of it, and I had only 20,000 shillings left. 1 day, 2 days, nobody called me. My bank doesn't know me. And now, with this that we have just seen, you all are about to know us so well, so well, which is why I was surprised that the clap was not heavier. You're about to know us so. In fact, if Mr. Meakin, if that was to scare us into being more honest, you have done the work. We are afraid. We are going to be more honest. This is highly impressive. The level of detail is perhaps beyond anything I've seen, and I thought in your seat, in the places that you serve, this is an unbelievable tool that I imagine will really build a certain kind of confidence in the way that you are interacting with the public that you serve. So thank you very much, Mr. Meakin. You really shed some light on this product. Now, this entire conversation that we're having this evening is certainly not isolated to the technological side of things. It's also very much regulatory. It exists within a regulatory framework. And so our next speaker is a really important part of this conversation. Welcome with me, Mr. Mackay Aomu, who is a director, non-bank financial institutions at the Bank of Uganda.
Thank you very much. It's a very interesting evening, and I must say we have come a long way. It's a good day meeting colleagues who have come a long way with us. Around 2007, we were discussing how to set up regulations for Credit Reference Bureau. But before that, there was also microfinance. There was issue of microfinance. We had long discussions on how microfinance was seen as a direct route to financial inclusion. So I'm tempted to stand on the protocol that has been laid already, but at the same time, I want to recognize, make a few recognitions, including starting with the MD of Creditinfo, the group CEO, Creditinfo. I see the ED UBA. I want also to recognize Robert for what you have just shared with us. And I know that the association is here. I should recognize you. And all distinguished guests from the financial sector, as well as development partners, ladies and gentlemen, and good to you all. So I've made a few reflections, but we're here once again discussing a very pertinent subject. And from the preliminaries, something has caught my mind: safety, inclusiveness, resilience, and making it hard for the fraudsters. I think those are the few things I've caught up. But standing prominently is issue of financial stability, financial inclusion, anti-money laundering. So I want to make a few remarks. My name is Mackay Aomu, as introduced. My substantive portfolio is non-banking financial institutions, which includes Tier 2 banks, MDIs, credit reference bureaus, forex bureaus, money remittances, large circles, mortgage refinance. But today I stand here representing the Executive Director of Supervision. So it's a pleasure to join you at the launch of this very important eKYC fraud ID solution, which we look as an innovation designed to strengthen identity assurance, reduce fraud risks across the financial sector. The evenings focus on building confidence in the financial systems through fraud prevention cannot be emphasized. As Uganda's financial system becomes increasingly digital, ID-related fraud has shown more sophisticated and more costly. We have seen this happen, and this becomes very burdensome and is a scare to onboarding and achieving meaningful financial inclusion. We have seen direct financial losses, which have also resulted in high operational costs, as well as potential breaches, which could even lead to regulatory penalties. So these pressures affect institutions, and as we face them, we want to shape a destiny to ensure confidence of the consumers. So for Bank of Uganda, financial crime prevention remains a supervisory priority. It is fundamental to maintain sound and a trusted financial system. As I've indicated, fraud erodes confidence and can easily undermine the gains that we have made as far as financial inclusion is concerned. When consumers lose trust, they hesitate to engage with financial institutions. In turn, the banks tighten access, or it raises the costs of encouraging more financial inclusion. So this kind of circle hurts both sides of the market, the service providers as well as the consumers. Tonight's launch is therefore a very big milestone and a very important contribution to the growth of our financial sector. The remarks that I'm about to go into will be in 4 parts. First, the regulatory perspective, the issue of strengthening confidence and inclusion, collaboration, and the last part, I think, will be on supervisory expectations. So from a regulatory standpoint, welcome this innovation that enhances security while maintaining fairly grounded legal frameworks and regulatory frameworks. Bank of Uganda reviewed this proposal by Creditinfo and gave an objection to have it launched. Its scope is very, very rich, as you have seen, and it's within the CRB regulatory framework. Its design complies with the Data Protection and Privacy Act, as well as the issue of registration of persons, or Data Protection Act. Importantly, the solution is built on a secure, with consent-based models within the Uganda Data Privacy Protection Act, and this aligns with the principle that we all firmly, as supervisors, that innovations must be responsible, should be lawful and auditable. So with this foundation in place, we look forward to the benefits of this solution that's going to bring, particularly its ability to strengthen fraud prevention through fully integrated onboarding process. So I'll talk about confidence and inclusion. Credit reference bureaus and lenders play a central role in building trust across the financial sector. So the ability to provide reliable consumer and business information supports better decision making and a more inclusive credit market. In this context, this solution by Creditinfo advances two important objectives for the industry. First, it enhances consumer confidence. When institutions can verify identity quickly and accurately, it reduces fraud losses and improve portfolio quality, thus building trust in customers as well as the service providers in the wider market. Secondly, it supports responsible market expansion by reducing false positive, streamlining KYC checks, and lenders can now safely onboard first-time borrowers, lowers the risks to customers, widens access to credit without compromising security. So I will talk about collaboration, that fraud is not a challenge that only one institution can solve or face alone. The program reflects the reality, discussions across the sector, collaboration and shared intelligence, and this is the issue of breaking credit information barriers, and the reason why we had to license CRBs in this market. And as we get more and more institutions through the tier 4 segments, such as those which are non-deposit taking or credit only, SACCOs, this foundation is very important and collaboration is key. And we must also emphasize consumer education, continuous improvements in data quality. So I want to recognize the past efforts, and I'm happy to see that the ED of UBA is here. Remember the many initiatives we have done across the sector, with emphasis on indeed making hard the life of a fraudster. And I remember we talked about blacklisting and sharing information across the financial sector. At one point, we also had Next Media. I was still with you. There was this Better Steady campaign, which was aimed to empower Ugandans, provide knowledge and sensitization on the same subject. We also had an initiative through UCC, Tom Ferrer campaign with the Uganda Communications, a media initiative which was still aimed at raising awareness among the public about cyber and fraud. But I think this had one to a digital solution to a digital problem. So what we have done in the past has been a lot of talking, almost working out like scarecrows, you know scarecrows, or dogs, when they sense something, they start making noise. But fire should stop fire. So now going digital route is the best option. And we're very delighted about this. So as we work towards a strong and a safe ecosystem, the bank expects continued progress in several areas. Institutions must therefore maintain strong systems for data quality governance. There should be timely dispute resolution. The Bureau, as a very important channel, remains essential for customer trust. And we want to look at the industry-wide training and awareness, which is critical to ensure that the teams can identify and respond to frauds. Bank of Uganda, through Regulation 36 of the Financial Institutions Credit Reference Bureau 2022, has commended the establishment of a central data hub for credit information sharing. And the aim here is to improve efficiency, accuracy of data submission by credit providers, and as well as accredited credit providers through the bureaus, so that we address the limitations of existing decentralized models, enhance credit market transparency, and reduce information asymmetries. I think I'll talk about this. The project is in advanced stage, and we hope, I think by end of this financial year, which ends in June, for the central bank, we should have moved a step ahead. So basically here, I'm happy that I just returned from Knowledge Exchange from Bank of Tanzania. I'm also happy to note that I visited the offices of Creditinfo in Dar es Salaam. and we learned quite a lot there. Indeed, a market leader here. So what will happen is that all the supervised financial institutions will submit credit information data to the central bank, to the central hub. And the hub will then power out this information to all the credit finance bureaus on equal basis. And then the credit bureaus on the other side will also be able to receive information from the other players who are not supervised by the central bank, like digital lenders, other smaller circles, and that will be consolidated into the report that comes from the central bank. And so we shall have a comprehensive picture. Credit information, centralized, distributed fairly. I think this will also reduce undue stress between the bureaus. I know now the newcomers are finding it difficult to access the market, but I think this route will make things much better. So in conclusion, fraud prevention is more than just a defensive measure. It's an investment in confidence, growth, and long-term stability. Effective redress mechanisms, responsible data practices will support credit expansion, accelerate digital transformation, and strengthen financial consumer protection in Uganda. So on behalf of the Bank of Uganda, we want to congratulate Creditinfo. We also want to recognize all the other participants and stakeholders here. This is a very important milestone. I want to thank all of you partners for this commitment, building a more resilient financial sector. And with these remarks, I want to wish you a successful launch, productive engagements. Thank you very much for listening to me.